want, you could stash this down here and then just... How do I sound? Good? Okay. We have a full house today, so if I could get everyone to go ahead and take their seats, that would be great. Thank you. Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Eugene's March 27th, 2026 program, Managing Our Watersheds. My name is Alyssa Gilbert, President of the City Club of Eugene, and it's my honor to welcome you to another of the many forums we have held since 1990 in the name of our mission to build community vision through open inquiry. City Club creates access to our local leaders and provides a platform for Eugene area community members to be heard. In light of the division we're experiencing in the world, I believe it's important now more than ever for us to gather as a community with curious minds and mutual respect. This space to listen, ask, learn, and gather is what City Club aims to provide to our community each week. Anyone who attends a City Club forum has equal access to asking questions in our space. We would love for you to browse our past programs at cityclubofeugene.org or our YouTube or Facebook. Please consider becoming a member if you'd like to support our rigorous volunteer work as Oregon's only city club that provides weekly forums. There are many ways to partner with us, and I'd like to thank our Diamond community sponsors. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. Get more information at uoregon.edu. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. Thank you to the City of Eugene and to Lane County for their generous support, and to our web host, 9 Planets, whose website support is critical to our functioning, making it easy to sign up as a member or learn more about us. As a quick reminder, please silence all cell phones in the hall. And with that, I turn the mic over to the coordinator of today's program, Mary Layton.
Today we will learn about Measure 2373, Lane County Watershed Bill of Rights. First, KLCC reporter Nathan Wilk, as you have, he will give us an overview of the terms of the measure. He's been working on this story for weeks and has collaborated with the speakers on his summary. Then we will hear from 2 remarkably accomplished and insightful women who will shed light from different sources on the watershed issue. Our first questioner is a journalist who specializes in environmental issues. That's Nathan Wilk. He joined KLCC News Team in 2022. He graduated from the University of Oregon School of Journalism and Communication. Born in Portland, he served as a DJ and public affairs host across Oregon. He's the glue that's going to hold this together because it's going to be a set of very tight timelines. Michelle Holman has lived in Deadwood in western Lane County's Coast Range for more than 30 years and has been active in the anti-herbicide struggle since the late 1970s. She lives on Deadwood Creek, which drains into the Siuslaw River. In her backyard, the salmon spawn. And what she and I have in common is I also lived 50 years ago in the Coast Range where a river ran through our property and marketable trees hung around everywhere. After many years of fighting unsuccessfully to stop aerial spraying of toxic chemicals, she co-founded Community Rights Lane County and the Oregon Community Rights Network. She has served on the Mapleton School Board for 25 years. 35. Okay, thank you. Her publicity said 25. Brittany Quick Warner is the president and CEO of Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. Her work is promoting prosperity in the economic life of our community. Prior to this role, she was Eugene Chambers Director of Business Advocacy and Events Manager. She has owned a small business and was a volunteer coordinator for United Way. She now serves on several nonprofit boards. Salmon do not spawn in Brittany's backyard, I don't think. But her community engagement provides other perspectives on the downstream effects of our environmental stewardship. For example, I hear of her work all the time on meeting the challenge of homelessness. Both of these speakers are notable for their willingness to take on big challenges in service to their personal values related to community life. They are talented stewards of resources, persistent and focused. I am looking forward to hearing the ways they understand the concept of watershed and how our actions in human communities can and do affect natural resources. After our break, we'll hear from Ashley Blow, Lookout's environment and public health correspondent. She has 12 years of experience in journalism and science writing and looks at the intersection of the issues that affect everyone who lives, works, and connects with the lands around us, whether public or private, developed or forested. She holds a master's degree in environmental policy from the University of Washington. My opening assumption in organizing this program is everybody wants a healthy watershed. The issue is, how can we best get one? And I'm hoping that the speakers today help us figure out more ways to think about this that lead us to a good solution. The first speaker is, we flipped a coin, and it's Michelle.
Thanks, Mary. Oh.
It's Nathan. Nathan's supposed to tell us about it.
No worries.
Hi there, my name is Nathan Wilk. I'm a reporter with KLCC and I'll be the moderator for your forum today. We're going to be taking questions in the second half of this program, so make sure to keep an eye, and there should be note cards around to write down some of your thoughts and what you want to know from your speakers. I will note I'm 24 years old, so please don't write in cursive because I never really learned to read it. But before we start with opening statements, I just wanted to get us all caught up to speed. So today we're talking about a measure which would create a Bill of Rights for watersheds in Lane County and a process to sue businesses and governments for violating them. So what is a watershed? Well, according to the measure, it's all the land and the water that drains into rivers, lakes, the ocean, and other similar natural features here in Lane County. Under this law, these areas, as well as their natural communities and ecosystems, would have the right to exist and flourish. That includes having clean water free from pollution. And people would be given the right to affordable water access at their homes. Lane County would be directed to enforce these rights, and the public could also sue on behalf of a watershed. If they oppose a project that's been approved by a government, they could ask a court to nullify that agreement. If a company or government is found liable, they'd have to pay the costs to reverse the damage to the ecosystem. And they'd be fined for each day they failed to stop the impairment after it was reported. The public could also sue to force a government to take protective measures, even when there's not, quote, scientific certainty or full evidence of the risk. The measure says the rights it lays out would supersede, be above less protective state, federal, and international laws. With that out of the way, let's get into the opening statements here, starting with Michelle.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Mary. Thank you all for coming inside on what is a glorious day out there, but I think this is well worth it. Protect Lane County Watersheds, now organized as the Yes on Measure 2373 Committee, is a grassroots effort led by local volunteer residents to secure legal rights for our watersheds and to guarantee residents the right to clean water. We are members of this community who believe it is our right and our responsibility to protect the water we depend on from harmful corporate activity. With the help of some very able attorneys, we wrote this measure because the current law protects harmful business practices over the health of the people and the environment. We wrote this because nature requires better protections. We wrote this to acknowledge those who have been and currently are harmed by toxic chemicals in the environment. Today, water can be contaminated with herbicides, pesticides, and PFAS and still considered acceptable under regulatory standards. But those standards ignore the real dangers of cumulative exposure. They are not designed to truly protect public health. We need a new baseline, one that puts health of our watersheds and the people who rely on them first before corporate profits. Measure 2373 adopts the precautionary principle, also known as better safe than sorry. It requires creators of products to prove their safety before widespread use is allowed. This standard avoids environmental damage and human health hazards when the stakes are high, like when the timber industry uses toxic chemicals on timberlands. The precautionary principle is widely accepted policy standard for managing risk and potentially serious harm. It's used in the European Union, the UN, public health agencies worldwide. With so many cancers and neurological diseases on the rise, it's well past time that we in our country and in Lane County follow their cautious approach. There are 668 nature protective initiatives in 60 countries around the globe, including 179 in the US, according to the Eco-Jurisprudence Monitor. Why not right here in Lane County? This measure takes a preemptive, preventative, common sense approach. It gives residents the tools to act before contamination becomes widespread. Once pollution happens, it's far more expensive, often impossible to fully undo. And now we have the very real threat of large-scale AI data centers locating in our county. Data centers require vast amounts of water for cooling, straining local resources. These cooling towers contain a cocktail of toxic chemicals that end up being disposed on nearby lands, endangering nearby communities. Measure 20-373 is needed. Current environmental protection laws are not robust enough to protect Lane County from data centers, and our governor is proposing massive tax breaks for data centers. This measure would make Lane County less appealing for the corporations whose data centers raise our water and electricity rates and pollute our water. Please understand, this measure comes after decades of effort. People have testified, organized, written letters, met with officials, asked for stronger protections again and again, only to be told these harmful practices are legal. Just because they're legal doesn't make them right. Communities in Lane County are living with polluted water, aerial pesticide spraying, industrial clear cutting, increasing environmental harm. Opponents will try to shift the conversation toward fear of change, fear of uncertainty, but that fear must be weighed against the reality of watersheds under stress, human and animal communities living with environmental harm, climate pressures making clean water more scarce and more valuable. The question is not whether the current system is working. It clearly is not. The question is whether we are willing to say that in Lane County, the health of our water, our communities, and our futures matter more than the ability of powerful interests, many of whom don't even live here in the county, to continue to engage in harmful practices. At its core, the measure is grounded in a simple truth. Water is not optional. Healthy ecosystems are not optional. They are the foundation of our health, our economy, and our future. We are often told that we must choose between economic strength and environmental protection. This is a false choice, especially here in Lane, where recreation creates twice as many jobs as timber extraction. A healthy economy depends on a healthy environment. Without healthy watersheds, we risk losing both. And there is also the question of democracy. Who decides what happens in Lane County? The people who live here, or outside interests who profit while we bear the consequences? Why should big corporate interests have more power and privilege to do harm in our communities than we have to protect ourselves from those harms? Our measure affirms that watersheds matter, our communities matter. When larger systems fail, we the people still have the right and the responsibility to act. Look past the fear, look at the reality, stand for clean water, healthy ecosystems, and the future of our county. Vote yes on measure 20-373.
All right, next we will have Brittany Quick-Warner.
Good afternoon. Thank you all. I'm glad to be here this afternoon for this conversation. My name is Brittany Quick-Warner. I'm here representing a growing coalition of elected officials, individuals, nonprofit organizations, and businesses, including my hat as a board member for Better Housing Together and in my professional role at the Eugene Chamber of Commerce. I want to start with something that I think everyone here agrees on. We all want clean water. We all want healthy watersheds, and we care deeply about protecting this place that we call home. That's not where the disagreement is. The real question before voters isn't whether we value those things. The question is how we choose to govern them and whether this measure is the right way to do it. And based on what we know as we've come to understand this measure, we believe the answer is no. Because when you look beyond the title, this measure isn't really about setting clear standards for clean water or improving how we manage our watersheds. It's about creating a new and very broad legal pathway for lawsuits, and not just against big businesses, as Michelle implied. In fact, the measure allows any individual to sue a business, a farmer, a utility, a school district, a local government, and not just for actual harm, but for perceived risk of harm, and this comes straight from the measure, without the need for clear scientific certainty or full evidence of risk. That means a piano teacher who runs a business out of her house could be sued by her neighbor who doesn't like how she's landscaping her yard and claims it's impacting the watershed. This is a significant shift in how we make decisions as a community, and a shift that comes with real-world consequences. Many we believe are unintended by the writers of this measure, but they are real nonetheless. For example, one of the most concerning unintended consequences is how this could impact wildfire response. As written, this measure opens the door for lawsuits against the very actions that we rely on to keep people safe, like building fire breaks, conducting controlled burns, or using fire suppression materials, all of which could be claimed to impact the watershed. Those are essential tools preventing catastrophic wildfire. And when you introduce legal uncertainty to those decisions, you risk hesitation, delay, and increased cost at a moment when we need clarity and speed the most. We should also be honest about what this could mean for housing in our community. We already struggle to build enough housing in this region, across the state. This measure creates a new pathway for projects to be challenged or delayed through litigation, whether it's affordable housing, infrastructure, or basic development. When those challenges don't succeed, the delay and cost alone can still be enough to keep projects from moving forward. We're already seeing it in the housing development space. This just adds another layer and opportunity for litigation. At a time when housing affordability is already one of the biggest challenges we face, it's a real concern that we have about this measure. Now, I think it's also important to recognize that we are not starting from zero when it comes to environmental protection. Oregon already has some of the strongest water quality protections in the entire country. In fact, just a few years ago, environmental organizations and industry came together after those decades of work that Michelle talked about, and after extensive scientific review, to pass what's known as the Private Forest Accord. That effort resulted in one of the most significant expansions of water protections in decades, including large protected buffer zones along streams, strict herbicide regulations, strong requirements for road design and erosion control, and meaningful protection for fish habitat and drinking water. And here locally, year after year, our drinking water meets or exceeds all state and federal health standards, and this was before that new and extensive program went into place. So the question becomes, if we already have strong protections in place, is this measure the right tool to improve them? Because if the measure doesn't build on those systems in a clear and targeted way, and instead relies on litigation to drive outcomes, that's where a lot of people start to have concerns. Regardless of how a case is resolved, the cost of defending lawsuits is real. And when that risk is applied broadly to governments, to utilities, those costs don't disappear. They show up in higher rates and higher costs or reduced services. At a time when our local governments and school districts are facing severe budget deficits, this measure could require them to spend millions in legal defense instead of services for our community. Now, I want to be clear, conversations about sustainability and conservation matter, and we should absolutely continue to have them. But this measure is a solution in search of a problem, and it introduces risk and uncertainty and unintended consequences without a plan for clear outcomes. This measure, at the end of the day, comes down to balance, protecting our environment and protecting our community's ability to function, grow, and thrive. And the measure as written doesn't strike that balance. And it's why I'm encouraging a no vote on this measure.
Thank you both. Can we make sure we get a mic up here for them? If you can grab, if one of those is working, or both. A second to get my notes out here. All right. I'd like to start with you, Michelle, and have you respond to some of the claims that you've heard, including today, about this measure being too broad. Specifically, critics have taken issue with the phrase, no scientific certainty or full evidence of the risk. Can you explain why this phrase was included in the measure, and is it too broad?
Well, it's not too broad. It was designed broadly to be available to the changes in the future that may come. All of the rights of nature laws that I mentioned before are written broadly for that purpose. Our own Bill of Rights is written broadly. The First Amendment is written broadly. It's not, you're not going to hear what you cannot say specific, right? So this was done, intended with full understanding that if you don't design it broadly, then you limit yourself. And the environment is not really a limitless forum. As far as the science goes, the problem is that when you wait for scientific study to be accepted, you wait too long. We already know, and scientists tell us already that many of the chemicals that are in use across the globe are dangerous. Atrazine has been banned in the European Union. We'd like to see that happen here. We can't wait for our scientists to tell us, yes, atrazine is bad. We know atrazine is bad. So that's why we wrote the bill the way we did.
I see. Brittany, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I think that the challenge that we have is that it creates an incredible amount of uncertainty about what someone can or can't do, how they would be held responsible if someone were to assume that they or have a feeling that they are impacting the watershed. And part of the challenge is that we've seen measures like this be deemed unconstitutional because of the broadness, because of the lack of clarity in how they would be implemented and how people would be held accountable to them. And so introducing a measure, an ordinance in our community that already starts with a level of ambiguity that people don't know how they could or couldn't be impacted by it, I think is a challenging place to start. And to pass a law and then decide, well, we're going to fix it later, that's not a good place for our community to be in. I think we need that means the measure is not ready to be passed by the community.
Can I add one little thing?
We'll probably have more opportunities to touch upon that. I want to ask about current laws. Brittany, you mentioned that there were some robust protections already. Do Oregon's current laws and the laws in Lane County do enough to protect watersheds from the concerns that Michelle was describing?
Well, I think if you look at the data and the scientific kind of studies that have been done, when the environmentalists and the industry came together, there was a lot of effort put into making sure that we were measuring the impact, and we actually could see the outcomes of some of these laws that were put into place. And we've seen that the water quality in this community, people believe it to be true, and it's tested to be true, that we have some of the most incredible water in the entire country. And I think that knowing that we started at that place and that the protections that we've put in place now have only made that stronger, I do believe that we have a path to making sure and feeling confident that our water is safe here in this community.
Would you like to respond to that, Michelle?
The EPA sets standards for clean water, and they are sorrowfully low. They are based on legislation that says that a practice like aerial herbicide spraying is legally fine, and that we can manage that. I don't know how many people in this room have consented to have toxins put into their water, but we are all drinking waters that are not up to standard. We want to raise the standards. So that's what this is all about for us. It's raising the standards. It's not accepting parts per million over a lifetime, parts per million of a toxin. That's, EWEB says that the water surpasses and is they are in compliance. We don't think it's good enough.
Brittany, what would you say to somebody who is considering voting for this measure because they're worried about aerial sprays in their community or near their home?
I think what I would say is that conversation and that concern and that policy discussion has been had within the last couple years. And again, it was influenced by a lot of years of work from the environmental protection community in this private forest accord. That was one of the reasons they sat down and had this conversation. And so I feel like if we are constantly moving the goalpost on these types of regulations and we aren't even allowing them to sort of implement themselves so we can see the benefits and the reactions to them, we are never going to create an environment where both environmental protection and industry and economic success can exist in the same community.
Michelle, why not go through that process that Brittany's describing instead?
Because we know that this is a false argument, that the poisons are being sprayed on forests, that Eugene's water comes from the Mackenzie. That's a place where you get plenty of aerial herbicide spray. We believe it's time to stop poisons in the forest. That's why we wrote this law. It's time to stop. And the standards are too low for human health. We all know this. We know that cancers are growing. We know that neurological diseases are growing. We know that people are having miscarriages. We know that this is a dangerous set of standards by which a people are supposed to put their trust in their government. That's why the people are standing here today saying, we want to try something different. The status quo is not benefiting us.
I see. Michelle, what would you say to some of the people that Brittany described, the firefighter that's concerned about fire mitigation efforts being affected by this, or a small business owner? How would you convince them that they wouldn't be liable under this measure, or would they?
Well, first, firefighters have nothing to fear from this measure. This claim is fear-mongering. Think about it. If you have a forest fire, don't you believe that your government is going to say it's more important to put out the fire than to worry about whatever the concerns are in the moment? There are legal doctrines that actually protect firefighters. There's the necessity doctrine. There's the discretionary function doctrine. These are state doctrines. There's the emergency operations immunity doctrine. And then at the federal level, there's a supremacy clause. So firefighters have nothing to fear here.
Would you like to respond, Brittany?
Yeah, I think that it points out one of the challenges that we have with this measure is that it's written into the measure that this ordinance would preempt other local, state, federal, and international laws that have been put in place. And so that premise directly contradicts that we would be safe because we have other protections that would allow these things to keep moving forward. When you offer the opportunity for individuals to create or open a lawsuit against someone on such vague principles, you actually create an environment where there's not a lot of protections for those types of activities. And believe it or not, there are individuals out there who do not want to see some of this fire protection happening for reasons that I would let them argue. I wouldn't argue on their behalf. And so I think that there is a real fear and risk of that. And because the way this was written that said it preempts these laws and regulations have been put in place in other levels of government, it really creates a question of how would that protection still stand?
I see. I think we're going to continue on that topic, Michelle. I want to talk a little bit about constitutionality. Do you believe this measure, including what's included about superseding federal and international, less protective federal and international law, would hold up in court?
Let's find out. It's time to do something different. The current laws that regulate pollution rather than prohibit it outright are not working for the people and the environment. It's so past time to change the paradigm. We have this opportunity right now to get ourselves into a balance with nature and to protect ourselves. The real danger is the pollution. It's not the protection. And aren't we due for laws that protect the environment and not regulate its destruction? The constitutionality, I need to point out that there are many laws like our law that are in good standing right now. They have not been overturned. So let's find out what happens here in Lane County. I think it's time for the courts to wake up. I think it's time for the people to wake up. Business needs to wake up. We all have to understand. We've been being told for decades now that we're staring at the edge of the cliff. And what are we doing about that? So we're saying bring it. Let's see what we can do here. Let's try something different.
I see. Brittany, do you believe this would be constitutional?
I don't. I think that we've seen a very similar measure that was passed in Ohio that was written, protections for Lake Erie that had almost identical kind of conventions of this measure that was deemed unconstitutional. I think the challenge that we have too is that we have complex systems across our community that, sort of deciding to change one piece radically without assuming that we'll have consequences and downstream effects on all of these other pieces that are incredibly important and necessary for our community to thrive, to be able to support the people we have living here. I just think it's an unrealistic kind of way to look at this problem and to just say we're going to just go and see what happens while we see very real risk to these other things that we care a lot about, like housing. It's just not something we're willing to take a risk on.
I see. Michelle, what impact do you think this would have on the economy here in Lane County if this measure was passed?
Well, as I said, recreation outpaces timber harvesting in our community, in our county, and it's based on the health of the environment. So it's a win. We recently sponsored natural resource economist Ernie Nemi, and he talked a lot about how important it is to take care of the environment because it's upholding and increasing the value of our environment for recreation. And not only just the actual recreation of fishing and hunting and hiking, but when people come here, they stay in hotels, they eat in restaurants, they infuse our economy. So it's time that we understand, timber might have been king once. Timber is no longer king in Lane County. And Oregon's forests are actually not even owned by Oregonians anymore. They're owned by hedge funds on the East Coast. So the monies don't even stay here. Recreation monies stay here.
I see. Brittany, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, a couple of things. We have a lot of forest land owned in the state by long-standing, multi-generational Oregon families. And so to say that they are all owned by out-of-state corporations is incorrect. It's also, I believe, not an either-or conversation. We have an incredibly robust recreation industry, which we support greatly, and we want to see that industry grow, and we have a robust timber industry. I think there's been some misquotes of the size and the impact of the timber industry in this state. There's over 60,000 jobs in the forest sector in this state, and they pay wages that are living wages for families across the state that I do not think we can just dismiss. Blaine County has more jobs in this industry than any other county in that industry, and it's something we should be proud of. our timber industry is evolving greatly, and their practices are evolving. The technology, the innovation coming out of that industry is something we should be proud of as a community. But I would also like to mention this measure, the way it's written, it didn't pick and choose who gets impacted by it, who gets what type of industry or what type of business might be impacted by it. In fact, our recreation industry, who spends a lot of time on our rivers, near our watersheds, they also have concerns that the activities that they're doing could somehow be perceived as impacting the watershed, and that they are at greater risk because of their proximity to and the activities that they are doing. And so the way that it was written in such a manner that someone could feel that somebody is impacting the watershed, it just creates a lot of uncertainty and confusion and concern from all types of industries.
I see. Well, I think that's our time for the first section. We're going to go to sponsorships, and then we'll be back with a Q&A from the audience. Thank you both so much.
Before we begin our Q&A, a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station KLCC for airing City Club programs on Mondays at 7 p.m. In the metro area of Lane County, they broadcast on 89.7 FM and in Florence on 88.1 FM. For those listening at home or in transit right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC. We're grateful and honored to have you. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived at klcc.org, as well as on our YouTube channel and the City Club of Eugene podcast. There will be volunteers coming around to collect your written questions, and now we will have a short break before Q&A.
All right, I think we're going to get started with the second half of this. If you can all head to your seats. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for the audience questions. We have many here. We may be having to combine some. Some may unfortunately have to be skipped over, but we're hoping to get to as many of them as we can. We're going to start by having a reporter from Lookout Eugene Springfield ask our first question here for us. Ashley Blow, take it away.
Thanks, Nathan. So as we already have heard a bit this afternoon, Lane County has had a long tension between conservation interest and industry. And in my reporting, people on both sides have said collaboration, not litigation, is the most effective way to find solutions. But at the same time, people have said they've had to turn to litigation when they've exhausted all other options. So how does a measure like 2373 offer an opportunity to bring stakeholders together, or conversely, how can it push people farther apart?
We can start with Michelle on that one.
This is what we do when we're pushed to the brink. We have to bring the courts into it. If you look back in our history, the women's right to vote, at that one point that was not a thing, and we pushed it into the courts to make it a thing. The same with slavery. It used to be legal to own people. And if you just sat down at the table and tried to collaborate with slave owners, you likely weren't going to get anywhere. Sometimes we have to push it, like the Paris Accord. That's based on countries doing what they say they'll do, but there's no teeth in it. We have to put teeth in changing behaviors that actually harm us. We have to put teeth in it. It has to be a law. If it's legally protected to do harm, then you have to take it into the courts and into a legal setting that creates protections for the people and the environment.
Brittany?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, a personal value of mine is to always pursue collaboration at every extent possible. And I think that we've seen, collaboration, we've seen negotiation, compromise kind of coming together around things in a lot of different areas and issues that have been successful. The challenge that we have with this measure, and not just introducing a new path to litigation, is that it doesn't even clarify for folks what they should or shouldn't be doing to improve the watershed. And so I think that while we're pushing it into litigation, we're not actually even bringing any clarity to the folks that we're trying to inspire to be acting differently. And I think that's the challenge. There's no, the ambiguity in here is written in such a way that there's conflicts within the measure and the language. There's no limitations. There's no clear understanding of what impacts the watershed and what activity an individual business or government agency, et cetera, are doing. And so I think that litigation for the sake of litigation isn't going to actually create a cleaner watershed for us or a cleaner environment. And that's really what this is going to turn into, because there's not even a way for the courts to say what you are or aren't doing is wrong based on the measure that's in front of us.
I see. For Michelle, I think this is a good question of clarification. Obviously, you talked about aerial herbicide sprays and some of the concerns with that. Why not just advocate for an aerial herbicide ban at this time?
Well, we tried that, and we gathered all the requisite 14,000 signatures, tried to get it on the ballot. We were denied access to the ballot all the way to the Oregon Supreme Court. We really tried, partly because of the Forest Practice Act that says aerial spray is a legalized practice. So we decided, rather than to re-up on that kind of pathway, we decided we would try protecting the watersheds, and that is a back door, really, to taking care of the watersheds from aerial herbicide spraying. We'd love to ban aerial herbicide spraying, and At someday, I have no doubt that it will be a dinosaur. It will disappear. We're going to know that aerial herbicide spraying from helicopters is a very, very costly practice. This is a first step into protection, and we're hoping that the voters see the common sense approach and vote yes.
I see. Do you have anything to add to that, Brittany?
I mean, I think she mentioned it, is this measure is a backdoor into doing something else that is not what is written in the measure. And I don't think on behalf of voters in this county, it's fair to put something that is so broad that it now brings a whole lot of other people, governments, entities into this legal conversation, and then to claim that we're doing it because this is what our intention is. The intention might be one thing, but the impact is so far beyond that. And when you're talking about the court of law, like, the intention is not what they're ruling on. They're ruling on the impact and what's in the measure and how that may or may not impact a much broader group of individuals and businesses and organizations. So I think that it speaks for itself that this measure is written in a way that is unclear and maybe misconstrued in the public.
I see. We have a question here about the eWeb Board of Commissioners' decision to oppose this measure. I'll start with you, Brittany. What does that show, or what does that signify to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we understood to happen is that eWeb's attorneys, who they depend on to protect their organization, after analyzing the measure, determined that they would have significant liability and risk, and that they have a duty to the public, as we are the utility owners here, to protect that organization and protect ratepayers as much as they possibly can. And so that risk and that liability that they would be open to based on this measure was not something that they can move forward with supporting.
I see. And what for you did that signify, Michelle? What does that mean?
I think it signified a misunderstanding of what the measure really does. Recently at a community forum, one of the commissioners got at least 4 things wrong. He stated that individuals could sue under other individuals. Can't do that. He said that a can of Coke spilled into the river would count as pollution under the measure. It's a little absurd. That there's no evidence required to bring lawsuits. That's not true. And that one can sue just on the danger of harm as opposed to actual harm. I don't think that these folks were very serious about understanding what our measure does. One of the commissioners who actually raised the resolution in opposition to us takes money from timber and has accepted money from the chair of the PAC that's opposing us. It's not a good look.
I think as a broader question, and I'll start with you, Michelle, who has endorsed the campaign? Who is part of your coalition to get this passed?
I sure wish I had that list with me. We have 24 ballot arguments that will appear in the voters' pamphlet, 24 separate ballot arguments in support of what we're doing, from doctors to environmental groups to Winona LaDuke, who doesn't even live here but believes that we are the water protectors and that we have the right and responsibility to do what we're doing. Oh my gosh, I can't remember all of them, but that we have a nice group of folks, a robust group of folks who think that it's time to put away fear of what this possibly could do and advocate for this earth home we live on.
I see. And for you, Brittany, tell us a little bit about the coalition that's opposing this measure.
Yeah, so coalition is really a broad sort of demographic. It's not just businesses, it's elected officials, both Republicans, Democrats, non-affiliated. We have individuals, mayors from across the county who've stepped up to say that this is not the right move for their communities as well. Ultimately, we have a growing kind of grassroots support system of individuals who, I will go back to say, the measure indicates that individuals can sue businesses, and that includes sole proprietors. And so the conversation about individuals suing individuals is actually true if you're looking at the entities that the business entities in the community. And so again, it comes back to the ambiguity of this, is I feel like people just don't understand it, and that's really who is kind of coming behind this coalition to say, even if I am an environmentalist, we have, self-proclaimed environmentalists saying, I believe in clean water, I believe in protecting our environment, but I also believe in making sure that whoever is putting these laws in place is doing so as a way to clarify for people what they can and can't do or should and shouldn't do, and this isn't doing that. So I will say too that, I think that who is supporting this financially or is supporting other candidates financially is also being misconstrued as mentioned. I think that there are a lot of individuals who've been looking at this issue for a long time, who have become involved in the campaign and through that have decided to give and to contribute.
I see, thank you. Michelle, I think we have an audience question around something that has been touched upon a little bit, but how does aerial herbicide spraying and clear-cut logging affect water quality?
I live in the Coast Range. I've lived in Deadwood since 1977. A lot of clear-cut logging, a lot of aerial herbicide spraying, and a lot of harm. So we have multiple cancers. We have the chief petitioner for the spray ban was sprayed and got cancer, and she died. I myself, after my first child, I had 7 miscarriages. Then I had my son, and I had 3 more. My husband has Parkinson's. There's a family of 4 in Triangle Lake, all exposed to atrazine. The kids with spontaneous bloody noses right after the exposure. Farmers have had animals die, sustained crop damage, countless stories of significant health effects. Herbicides are extremely toxic to people, plants, and animals, and the spray drifts. They like to say that these are really very surgical operations. Not true. The wind patterns change, and sprays, they all find their way into the water. You know, we talk about we all live downstream. That is not just a saying, that's a reality. So, this is a problem. This is a massive problem, and we want to stop it.
I see. Thank you for that. And Brittany, I guess hearing that that account, how would you respond?
Yeah, well, for starters, my heart goes out to you. I also had multiple miscarriages before I was able to have my first kiddo, and so I understand the deep and sort of sincere desire to try to alleviate any kind of pain like that in someone's life. And I also think that these types of instances, cancer, birth defects, death in some cases, I believe they require investigation and verifiable facts, and I think that we must take those things seriously. We know Oregon has a robust enforcement system with real penalties, and those violations, those claims should be investigated. The state takes exposure in that way really seriously. Our state is known for, and we should be proud of, our willingness to protect our environment. And so making sure that those claims are investigated, and if we're making those types of claims and at the magnitude that we are, but we're not going through the processes that are in place, then I think that we're kind of adding to the fear that's being put out into the community around this. So I think having data, making sure we're using the processes and the systems that we have, and looking at the true quality of our water and recognizing that that we do in fact have very clean water in this community in this region, and we should not be afraid of that.
Nathan, you have to let me get 15 seconds here. We have had studies done in our area. We've had studies and studies and studies, and they sit on shelves. They are doing nothing to protect us. Those studies give us nothing. They might make the people who do the state's business feel good. They're doing nothing for the people on the ground.
All right. Michelle, can I have you give an example, if there is one, of a place where a watershed Bill of Rights in the United States has been successful or similar?
Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a city that stopped fracking, and it's still holding. The fracking is a big economic engine in Pennsylvania. The people of Pittsburgh and their government officials said, we don't want that happening here. That's years ago. That's in the early 2000s, and it still stands.
I see. Do you have a response to that, Brittany? I don't know.
I don't.
Okay, I see. Brittany, I'm going to give you like 20 seconds to say anything you want if there's anything that hasn't been addressed, since I just gave Michelle time, or I could give you it at the end.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay. We've talked a lot about aerial herbicide sprays, but I think data centers, which is something that Michelle touched upon, has come up in several questions. So I'll ask this question to you, Brittany. If not this, are there other measures that Oregonians or those in Lane County can take to feel safe from data centers being built in their community, or should that be a concern?
I absolutely believe that this is a very interesting time, I guess, in sort of our economic future, not just in Oregon. This is happening across the country and in other places in much higher rates than in our state. And I absolutely believe that when you kind of bring a new industry to the table and they have specific needs when it comes to utilities, water, et cetera, that communities have to evaluate that. And I think that's a healthy, safe thing for our community and our state to be doing. But I think we actually have to study it and we have to understand it, and we can't make snap judgments or assumptions of how those operate. We know firsthand from companies that we've talked to that even the data center industry, I guess, if we want to call it that, they are evolving very quickly because they recognize that they are not going to be able to continue to operate in the way that they have across the country, utilizing the amount of resources they utilize. And so even those data centers are very quickly adapting to that reality and changing the way that they utilize those resources, et cetera. And so to just assume what we've seen in the last 2-3 years in an industry that evolves faster than any of us can tie our shoes, like we can't expect to put in place regulations that won't be, needed to be changed down the road. And so I think that we have to do more study, more understanding, and absolutely we should have those conversations.
I see. This question says, nothing has changed the Willamette watershed's ability to exist, recreate, and evolve more than flood protection claims. How would this impact flood control, Michelle?
Well, the dams that are, I guess the Lieber Dam is scheduled to come down, and this measure would entirely put it on the science and the county commissioners to understand and to figure out how that would work so that it wouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. I'm concerned about this notion that we have to have science and already know the answers to these problems. I need to go back to the data center because we're acting on strong evidence of that risk doesn't undermine science. It reflects responsible governance. So all of these things with dams or with the data center or how we're going to move forward into the future has to be done with responsible governance. And I think we underestimate what our government could be doing for us. And these people are being paid by us. So as far as dams, this would be important to bring, I think, to understand what's at risk for the watersheds. I'm a little, I kind of have to defer to the scientists on this one. I'm not a water specialist.
I see. Brittany?
Nor am I. I appreciate that. I think that the concern, I guess what I would ask back or kind of challenge is that In one situation, we're saying we have to depend on our governments to defend and protect and to make these decisions. And on the other hand, we're putting a measure in place that's saying we don't trust our governments to defend and protect and to make these decisions. And so we want to put it in the hands of the citizens without the need for scientific evidence, but we're depending on scientific evidence. So it feels like we're contradicting ourselves even in this conversation a little bit. I think that we are in a moment where we have a lot of folks who are involved in these conversations around the future of the dams in our community and our state, and could make an argument either way, that keeping them or getting rid of them are going to impact the watersheds. And so I think that, again, that ambiguity kind of raises the question of, so what do we do next about this? And putting these types of measures in place that just create more confusion and not less is a challenge.
I see.
It's partly that we are the government. We are the government. The people are the government, and we have to insert ourselves into that process. So we don't just give it over to our county commissioners. We work with our county commissioners. We have to work together.
All right, I think it is time to go to closing statements. I believe Brittany was going first.
Well, thank you all again. I really appreciate the time and opportunity, Michelle. It's been lovely to meet with you. I want to leave you with this. We all agree, I do believe this, we all agree on the goal that clean water and healthy watersheds are important for our community. But good intentions alone don't make good policy. Our concerns come down to these basic things. This measure is broad and vague, and it opens up so many different community institutions and community members to frivolous lawsuits, which will cost us all with higher taxes, economic harm, and risk to services. Some of those risks include risk to wildfire response by creating uncertainty around the tools that we use, risk to housing by opening up the door to delays and challenges at a time when affordability is already a crisis, and a risk to our community through this cost and uncertainty, and unintended consequences. I do believe that. And all of that comes without a clear plan for how this actually is going to improve our water quality. Because the truth is, we already have these strong protections in place, and we need to see them through to the completion and to the place where they are already now protecting our water, and even more so in the future. We've made real progress through that science-based policy and collaboration. We don't need to replace that with a system that's built around litigation. We can protect our environment and protect our community. I don't believe we have to choose either or. And this measure, however, I don't think strikes that balance. That's why I'm asking you to vote no on Measure 2373. If you have questions or want to learn more or want to join the coalition, please visit protectourcounty.org. Thank you.
We have a clear choice. On May 19th, we have the opportunity to join the more than 670 other communities on our precious planet home that have shifted to the understanding that in order to be healthy, to have a healthy future, we have the responsibility, the obligation to protect the earth that sustains us. Government agencies have permitted harmful practices to continue instead of stopping them. The citizen initiative process exists for moments like this, when communities must step up and act to correct government inaction. We are using the initiative system as the people's legislative mechanism. It is what we the people do when every other avenue has failed. Current regulations just regulate pollution. They do not prevent it. Toxic chemicals in our water pose real measurable health risks. Stronger protections are long overdue. I don't agree with Brittany that they're enough. This is not a partisan issue. This is a matter of public health, common sense, and basic responsibility. When nature is healthy, the people are healthy. The status quo is unacceptable. Our watersheds, our health, and our economy deserve better. Measure 2373 is good law. There is an urgent need for laws that strengthen and expand protections to secure watersheds, sustain both people and nature. The opposition is working hard to cultivate fear to dissuade votes, but those claims don't hold up. And really, let's not let fear be what moves us. We have to try something new here. Over 14,000 Lane County residents signed the petition to put this measure on the ballot. Voters want clean water. Beware of the scare tactics the opposition is working hard to cultivate. Don't believe them. They benefit financially from the status quo at our expense. This law will protect our health and a strong economy. We don't have to choose between the two. We can have both. Are you willing to trade off a chance to protect what we love, to ensure a better future for our communities, and address existing harms to prevent what are speculative and hypothetical harms? We, our children, and their children deserve better. Let's vote yes on Measure 2373.
That's all the time we have for today. Please join me in thanking Michelle Holman and Brittany Quick-Warner. This has been our March 27, 2026 conversation at the City Club of Eugene. We're back next week here at Wow Hall in downtown Eugene on Friday, April 3rd at noon. That program will be our forum featuring the candidates for Eugene City Council Wards 5 and 6. I'd also like to plug that the City Club of Eugene is currently recruiting board members. If you're interested in learning more about the City Club Board of Directors, email us at cityclubofeugene@gmail.com. Thank you all and have a great week.